Welcome to our Friday live stream called This Week in Cannabis News, powered by Dutchie. Each Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll deliver an overview of this week's cannabis news. It's quick, it's comprehensive, and it sends you into the weekend as a more informed cannabis professional, and it's all made possible by our friends at Dutchie. You can find and connect with the team there through a link in the show notes or the chat. Now, let's get to it. The process to reclassify cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, initiated by former President Joe Biden, was supposed to kick off with administrative hearings in January. Well, now it's mid-April, and we haven't heard much since the hearings were delayed. It's unclear how President Donald Trump's administration plans to approach the issue, despite his posts in support of cannabis reform from the campaign trail. For what it's worth, cannabis policy didn't appear anywhere on the list of federal drug policy priorities for the new Office of National Drug Control Policy Director, Sarah Carter, earlier this week. And in a panel hosted by Ohio State University's Drug Policy and Enforcement Center on Tuesday, former officials shared why they're not crossing their fingers for rescheduling anytime soon. Matthew Lawrence, a former DEA official, said rescheduling will only move forward if it's a political priority for Trump. He expects that the DEA will kick the can down the road. Here's what he said. I leave that to political experts to kind of make that prediction. But if it's not a political priority, or if it's a mixed political thing, like it's a win and a loss, then you've got to assume it's going to be the can-kicking approach. Well, let's hope not. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz of the conservative Christian Democratic Union won a shaky victory in February's election. On the campaign trail, Merz opposed Germany's cannabis legalization policy, which went into effect last year. Some in the industry feared he would work to roll that legalization back. It now appears his party has reached a deal with the Social Democratic Party of Germany to govern the country, which means that cannabis legalization remains unchanged in Germany, at least for now. And it seems like Pennsylvania is in the cannabis news every single week. And this week, we have some insight from Democratic Pennsylvania State Representative Emily Kincaid. In this quote, Kincaid is referring to the ongoing battle in Pennsylvania to legalize cannabis, specifically about Republicans. Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro, of course, is a strong supporter, but many of the Republicans in the state legislature are pushing back. Here's what she had to say. They're not saying no to the idea of legalization in and of itself. I think it's a great indicator that there's so many people talking about it, including the negative comments. They're saying the proposal isn't what they want it to be, but they're not saying no in any of it. To other big states. Some states are making big news when it comes to the hemp-derived THC industry this week. First, Texas lawmakers are debating two bills that would severely restrict intoxicating hemp products in that state. SB 3 passed in the Senate in March would ban all THC products altogether, while HB 28 would ban synthetic THC gummies, but regulate hemp-infused beverages like alcohol. So lots of news on the hemp front coming from Texas. And to Florida. Florida's Senate passed SB 438, a bill that would ban all Delta-8 THC products and limit hemp-derived Delta-9 THC products to no more than 5 milligrams per serving. Last year, Governor Ron DeSantis vetoed similar legislation, and you recall he teamed up with the state's hemp industry to fight against Amendment 3, a bill that would have legalized cannabis in the Sunshine State via the ballot. You can read more about that on our website. And finally, Canada's coherent federal approach to cannabis policy is achieving one of its primary goals by displacing the illicit market, according to a new study published in the International Journal of Drug Policy. Still, the study found the expenditures associated with the program are increasing. A majority of Canadians say that cannabis legalization is actually a crowning achievement of the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau's tenure. You can read more about that study in our newsletter at cultivated.news. And in case you missed it earlier this week, going back to Canada, we had Lana Cully, who is a vice president at Aurora, talking about one of the research projects they've been working on to curb powdery mildew in cannabis cultivation. Check out a little snippet and see the full one on our YouTube channel.
What we started back in 2018 is we actually received Genome Canada funding, $4.2 million project in a partnership with UBC to try to understand the natural resistance to powdery mildew in certain cannabis varieties. We've been on this journey since 2018, since before legalization, really, but we just published in a peer-reviewed journal in the last month that we have identified a novel source of powdery mildew resistance that we have now protected with a patent application. And we are now using that resistance and the tools that we've developed in order to breed this resistance into our cultivars in the future. So long term, we'll be able to grow cannabis cultivars that do not need either a product to treat the powdery mildew or the extensive labor used to manage it.
Thank you, Lana, for joining us earlier in the week. And all these stories and much, much more can be found on cultivated.news. That's it for this week in cannabis news, powered by Dutchie. But we'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. Check back every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern right here on our channel. And be sure to get our newsletter inbox every morning by visiting cultivated.news, which you can find right here. And another thank you to our partners at Dutchie who make this show possible every single week. A link to find out more about Dutchie is in the show notes and in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Have a good and safe weekend.